Everyone knows Silicon Valley. Everyone knows what's in Seattle. When people think about where tech actually lives, that is just generally where their mind naturally goes. But they're actually wrong. The most important piece of internet infrastructure is running through Loudoun County, Virginia. 70% of the world's internet traffic runs through one county. The AI tools that you used this morning, the video that you're actually watching right now, the cloud that's storing all the storage on your phone, there's a real chance that all of it is physically running in the heart of Northern Virginia. Most people who live here don't even know that this tech hub even exists. But I think that you should know. So today, I take you inside what's actually happening here right now, how this became the data center capital of the world, what's going on right now in 2026 that most people don't know about, and what that actually means for your career if you live here or you want to. I'm Spencer. I work as an enterprise cloud professional, as well as the creator behind Tech Motive Supreme, my personal tech consulting business. I work right here in Northern Virginia, and I'm here to bring you the key insights that nobody's mentioning and talking about currently. Before I get into how this all happened, I want you to understand just how big this market actually is. CBRE, one of the biggest commercial real estate firms in the world, published an article in March of 2026 putting Northern Virginia at about 4 gigawatts of commissioned data center inventory. JLL had it closer to 4.9 megawatts. The difference is really just in the methodology. To put that in perspective, Northern Virginia doesn't just beat every other US data center market. It has nearly 3.5 times more capacity than all of the secondary markets combined. And even that is still not enough to meet the demand. But the stat that really stopped me was that CBRE claims that 96% of the new capacity scheduled to come online in 2026 was already commissioned before the year even began. Think about what that actually means. Companies are signing on buildings that haven't even been built yet, because if they choose to wait until the building is fully done, then it's already gone to the next buyer. The demand is moving faster than the construction can actually keep up. So the question that I kept coming back to when I dug into this was, how does something like this even happen? How does one county in Northern Virginia end up holding 70% of the world's internet traffic? There's a real answer to that, and it starts a lot earlier than most people think. Picture the mid-1990s. The commercial internet is just starting to emerge, and most people still don't really understand what it's going to become. Out near Dulles Airport, you got lots of flat land, relatively cheap real estate, access to major highways, and a location that's still close enough in proximity to DC. That combination turned out to become the beginning of something big. What looked like quiet suburban land became the foundation for one of the most important digital hubs in the world. Here's something most people don't know. The actual backbone of the internet and the fiber infrastructure that it grew out of has roots right here in Northern Virginia. The first version of the internet, ARPANET, the government project that became the internet, ran its early wide area networking experiments in this region in the 1960s. And the two people who designed TCP and IP, Vint Cerf and Robert Kahn, the protocol that every device that connects to the internet still uses to this day. They were both working and living right here in Northern Virginia. So when the commercial internet needed a home in the mid-90s, people were trying to replicate what was already a foundation currently in this region. In 1998, a startup called Equinix built a data center right here in Northern Virginia, American Online, which was headquartered up the road in Dulles. If you grew up in the 90s, then you know about AOL. AOL was the internet for most Americans at this point in time. And the data powering every chat, every email, every web page was running in that one Equinix building in Northern Virginia. It became the busiest internet interconnection point in the world almost overnight. Every carrier, every ISP wanted to plug into it because that's where the traffic was. And the more connections that you have, the more valuable it is to connect there. Now that's the network effect. And once it starts, it's very hard to stop it. Then the dot-com bubble burst in 2000. Companies that were worth billions on paper were gone within months. AOL started collapsing under its own weight. And all that commercial real estate along the Dulles corridor that was snatched up during the boom, suddenly it was sitting empty. Buildings, fiber, and infrastructure, all of it sitting empty and going for almost nothing. Data center developers went in and bought it all up. Amazon opened its first data center here in 2006, then Microsoft, then Google, then Meta, one after another, because the fiber was already here, the power infrastructure was already here, and everybody else was already here. Northern Virginia wasn't just an option, it was the obvious choice. Why set up shop anywhere else and have to restart from the ground up? So this leads into the question, why not somewhere else with cheaper land? Why not the Midwest? Because land alone isn't enough. Dominion has historically offered electricity rates below the national average, which matters when you're running thousands of servers that never shut off. And the Potomac River sits right here, which gives facilities the natural resources for cooling. Cheap power, nearby water for cooling, and redundant fiber. You almost never get all three in the same area. Here's a part of the story that doesn't get talked about enough. Virginia decided that it wanted this industry. Virginia created a data center tax incentive that basically says if you invest 150 million and create at least 50 jobs that pay above the local average wage, then you qualify for sales and tax exemption for the equipment and the software that you buy. At the scale that these hyperscalers operate, that exemption is worth tens of millions of dollars. Virginia was one of the first states in the country to move on this, and it actually worked. Other states eventually followed, but by the time they did, Northern Virginia had a decade head start. The last piece of this is the people. Loudoun County is well educated. About 65% of all adults in Loudoun County have a bachelor's degree or higher. That matters because you got proximity to DC, federal agencies, defense contractors, plus Northern Virginia Community College, which partnered with AWS to launch the country's first cloud computing associate's degree program. The talent pipeline grew up here because the industry grew up here. And the industry kept growing because the talent was already here. None of those factors is magic just on its own. What makes Northern Virginia impossible to replicate is that all of them happened right here at the same time, and then locked in through 30 years of network effects. That's why there's no data center hub as big as the one here. The window closed. So that's the history. Now here's what I want to talk about, because this is the part that most coverage gets wrong. What's actually happening right now from somebody who's inside of it every day. You've probably heard that AI is driving a massive surge in data center demand currently. That's true, but the way that it's usually reported misses something important. It's not just more of the same demand. AI changed the very nature of it. Traditional enterprise computing, storing files, running business software, it's relatively predictable, spread out, and manageable. AI training is completely different. You need massive, dense blocks of power all in one place, running GPU clusters at intensity, all things that a standard data center wasn't designed for. And you need it to be committed now, not in 2 years when the building is done. That's why 96% of 2026's capacity has already been committed before January 1st. Companies aren't waiting around to see what gets built. They're reserving space in buildings that are still just concrete and steel. So if there's all this demand for the physical infrastructure, then ask yourself, so what about power? In February of 2026, Dominion filed its report with Virginia State's Corporation Commission. This is a regulatory filing, and what it showed was pretty astonishing. Dominion stated that power requests in their current queue had reached over 70,000 megawatts. Northern Virginia's commissioned data center inventory has reached nearly 4 megawatts currently, already concentrated heavily in Ashburn and the surrounding areas. The pending requests that Dominion reported are nearly 17 times that number. Now, it's good to know that not every one of those requests will become a built project, but even after you filter them down, that's still an enormous backlog. Dominion also states that they get about 10 new data center requests per month. Bloomberg has reported that wait times for large power connections could stretch up to 7 years in some cases. So if you're a hyperscaler sitting in a boardroom and you don't already have a power agreement locked in Ashburn, then you're not building in Ashburn. And that's exactly what's happening. So where are they going? AWS's expansion tells you how far this is stretched beyond Ashburn. Amazon acquired the Devlin Tech Park site in Bristol, Virginia, a property that was zoned for up to 3.5 million square feet of data center space. And that's part of a bigger trend. Developers are pushing down the I-95 corridor to places like Prince William County and Stafford, chasing available power wherever they can find it. This isn't about the market retreating. This is the market expanding so fast that it's spilling beyond the corridors of Ashburn. Now, how does this affect the nearby communities? Northern Virginia data centers use nearly 2 billion gallons of water in 2023. That number is up 63% from 2019. So the gates are up. Projects are being decided on a case-by-case basis with real community input, and some are getting denied. Northern Virginia is still one of the most dominant data center hubs in the world, but the era of fast-track, frictionless development inside of Ashburn is changing. All right, so now let's talk about what this actually means for the people who actually live here or are just trying to figure out the next move in tech. Because I think that there's a real opportunity sitting in plain sight that most people who are living or from this area are walking right past. On any given day, there are over 1,200 open data center jobs in this industry. Uptime Institute claims that 67% of data center operators find it difficult retaining and keeping qualified technical staff. Their complaints were that staffing shortages were their number one operational concern. Not equipment costs and not energy prices, it was just about finding people. And that number is still steadily going up and not down. The build out is outpacing the talent pipeline. There are not enough qualified people who know how to do this type of work. And that gap in Northern Virginia is specifically the opportunity. Let me give you the actual ranges from 2026 data. For data center technician roles in Ashburn, Indeed shows an average of around $30 as of May 2026, with postings running from $27 to $44 an hour, based on employer and experience level. Glassdoor puts the annual range for this tech position at around $56,000 to $84,000 a year. For facility engineers, the people keeping and running these mechanical and electrical systems for these buildings, Indeed shows an average of about $82,000 a year, with the ranges running from $62,000 to well over $100,000. And on the higher end, if you can get into AI infrastructure specifically, liquid cooling systems, GPU cluster management, senior roles are looking around $130,000 to well over $165,000 total comp. These positions barely existed nearly 3 years ago. Here's a geographic reality. Virginia leads the country in average pay for these types of roles. The difference between what you'd earn in Virginia compared to a lower paying state is nearly $48,000 a year. Geography matters enormously inside of this field, and if you're in Northern Virginia, then you're already positioned in the right place for that. So what do you actually need to get into this? Because this is the question that I get the most. I have a previous video, and I'll link it down below, discussing how I would go about getting a position in this industry. But a quick overview of what's important. Relevant certifications often carry more than a 4-year degree at entry-level roles in this field. CompTIA Network Plus, CompTIA A Plus, these are what hiring managers are actually looking for when they're trying to fill these technician roles. Northern Virginia's community college Nova has programs built exactly around this. And AWS also has their specific training pathways, such as the AWS Accelerated Program. But here's what I'll tell you from the inside. The career ladder in this field is actually real. Entry level, mid level, senior engineers, data center facility engineers, data center managers, and at each step, you're earning more than other industries at the same experience level. So the opportunity is here, but most people driving down Route 28 have no idea this even exists. 30 years of fiber, government policy, cheap power, and network effects, all converging in one county in Virginia. And now that ecosystem is hitting the limits of its own success. Power constraints, the community pushback, zoning votes, the industry is adapting and spreading outward, racing to solve the energy problem. This is a story of the internet's home, and it's still currently being written. I work inside this industry every day, and I'm here to tell you what's real and what's actually happening. Not hype, not fake press releases, what's real and what's actually happening. If you were able to learn something, let me know your thoughts down below on data centers within your community. And if you knew that this tech hub was here all along, make sure that you share, subscribe, like, and comment for more.